Has the Pentagon finally woken up from sleeping on small drones? Everywhere we look, it seems small, cheap drones are dominating the battlefield, even amidst advanced fighter aircraft and main battle tanks. War is vastly different from what it was just 5 years ago, and the US military just got the memo, literally. On July 10th, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth signed a sweeping directive that aims to overhaul how the US military builds, buys, and uses small drones. For the first time, the Pentagon is telling commanders to treat drones like munitions, cheap, expendable, and replaceable, not like fragile aircraft wrapped in red tape. It's a big shift, but with adversaries and allies already years ahead in drone warfare, it raises a lot of difficult questions like, how did we fall so far behind? How far back are we? What is the Pentagon doing now? What are individual branches like the Army and Marine Corps doing? And probably most importantly, what will success actually look like for the US in drone warfare? So we asked the people who would know, former combatant commanders, drone warfare experts, and senior defense officials. This video is directly based on original reporting from Jeff Schogol and the Task and Purpose team. Jeff interviewed those inside the fight and those trying to prepare for the next one, and yes, if you're not aware, Task and Purpose started and continues to function as a newsroom dedicated to covering the military from a rank and file perspective. It's truly an awesome team that does incredible and impactful work, so if you're curious and you haven't been there yet, go to taskandpurpose.com. Before we get started, we want to thank Odoo for sponsoring today's episode. If you're still managing your business with a mess of spreadsheets, sticky notes, and a patchwork of apps, stop the chaos. Odoo brings it all under one roof with a unified business management system that covers everything from sales to shipping to the shop floor. Odoo gives you full control over inventory and manufacturing from a single dashboard. You can track receipts, deliveries, point of sales orders, and work orders in real time. You'll see exactly what's moving, what's delayed, and what needs attention. You can automate vendor reminders, schedule shipments, scan components with a mobile barcode app, and update worksheets or bills of material on the fly. Whether you're running one warehouse or 10, Odoo keeps your operation fast, accurate, and fully connected. The best part though, everything talks to everything. Sales, e-commerce, CRM, inventory, manufacturing. It's one connected system, not a Frankenstein of bolt-on. So if you're done taping your business together with whatever software you can find, head over to odoo.com. Your first app is free. No trial, no credit card, no nonsense. You've got a business to run, let Odoo make it easier. For the last 2 decades, the Pentagon's focus has been on big drones, Reapers, Predators, Global Hawks, drones that took years to develop, cost millions to build, and required full aircrew support to fly. Small drones were side projects like ISR tools for platoon recon or maybe some light targeting, but they weren't weapons, they weren't treated as serious warfighting tools, and they were definitely not treated like the centerpiece of a kill chain. Meanwhile, Ukraine, Russia, and others were already turning drones into a whole new kind of fire support and weapon. Cheap FPV quadcopters rigged with explosives, crowdsourced kill chains built with commercial software and Telegram, field expedient tactics that could strike tanks, trench lines, and artillery positions with $500 drones built on the front lines, not in some faraway factory. Part of the problem is cultural. The US military has long prized high-end gear, ridiculous development timelines, and risk-averse procurement. Ukraine, facing an existential threat, did the opposite. They built, deployed, and iterated in real time. As that official told us, nothing focuses the mind like the prospect of being killed. You pick any tool that is handy and you use it. And if it doesn't work, you throw it away and don't worry about how much it cost. Ukraine and others are not waiting for the perfect drone. They're building good enough ones by the thousands and using them. So, if the US has been sleeping on small drones for a while, what was that final wake-up call? It really wasn't just one, I guess. It was more like the US was a lazy teenager who requires 15 alarms to wake up because they think they know everything, and they spent the last 20 plus years fighting an endless war with no clearly defined objectives. But anyways, even back in 2016, ISIS fighters in Mosul were already using commercial drones to drop grenades. That should have been a warning, but it took a lot more to get real attention. For years, we've witnessed their brutal effectiveness through thousands of videos coming out of Ukraine, where both Russia and Ukraine have made them a vital part of that war. Ukraine and Israel also demonstrated through Operation Spiderweb and Rising Lion just how useful these can be to affect fighting far from the trenches, with Ukraine using them to take out strategic Russian bombers and Israel destroying Iranian air defenses with them. Even non-state groups have adapted fast, with Hamas using commercial drones to drop grenades on Israeli positions and Houthi forces in Yemen using Iranian-supplied drones to attempt to strike US warships and regional targets with surprising precision. The cost of entry keeps dropping, but the effectiveness of these systems keeps rising. China has been watching all of it. Recently, the Zhutian drone mothership, capable of launching and recovering dozens of uncrewed aircraft, was unveiled. They're also building a full-size drone carrier modeled in part on Turkey's TCG Anadolu. These aren't just one-off prototypes, they're platforms for a new way of fighting. The US does still have more advanced systems, but it hasn't fully integrated small drones at the tactical level the way Ukraine or Israel or even Hamas has. As drone warfare expert Samuel Bendit put it in an interview with Task and Purpose, Ukraine's been refining this for years. The US is just starting to absorb the full tactical s-UAS and c-UAS problem set. That gap just isn't technical, it's cultural. The US is used to centralized control, multi-layered approvals, and exquisite platforms. This doesn't mean that the US has to fight exactly the same way, but it does mean there's a risk we show up to the next war playing by old rules while the other side's already breaking them. So what is the US actually doing to fix this? As we mentioned briefly before, on July 10th, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth signed a memo that outlines a major shift in how the US military acquires and fields small drones. For the first time, the Pentagon is telling commanders to treat drones less like aircraft and more like bullets. Small drones resemble munitions more than high-end airplanes, Hegseth wrote. They should be cheap, rapidly replaceable, and categorized as consumable. It's a big change in language, and in theory, it's supposed to unlock faster procurement. Unit commanders can now buy drones and critical components without running everything through the Pentagon. And instead of waiting for top-down fielding plans, services are supposed to push small drones down to the squad level by the end of 2026, prioritizing Indo-Pacific combat units. The idea isn't just about buying more drones, it's about breaking the red tape that slowed the US down for years. And to be fair, the military is borrowing from someone else's playbook here. A recent Army study on how Russia fights, and we've done a video on that you can watch, notes that Russian units treat drones as expendable. They launch them constantly, use them aggressively, and accept losses as part of the cost of doing business. This is not how the US has traditionally operated, with equipment losses seen as unacceptable in most cases, but in the future, it might have to be acceptable. Caitlin Lee, a drone warfare expert at RAND, says this new approach is a recognition that most of the rules we've applied to drones just don't make sense anymore. We don't need triple redundancy on their software or hardware. They're unmanned, so let's not get wrapped around the axle with the regulation. The line between a drone, a loitering munition, and a missile is getting blurrier and blurrier. But will commanders actually spend the money on drones? It's one thing for the Pentagon to say every squad should have a drone. It's a whole other thing for a battalion commander trying to build a budget for next year to decide between radios, vehicles, spare parts, or quadcopters. Despite our trillion-dollar defense budget, battalions don't have unlimited funds, and tough choices are made every year on how to spend that money, especially with training. The US does have a history of reacting to trends in fits and starts, as Lee puts it. We throw money at a problem, build a program, then move on to the next thing when attention shifts. that's not going to cut it here. If small drones are going to be treated like munitions, then they need to be funded like munitions, stocked like munitions, and trained with like munitions. Otherwise, this is just another memo that gets forgotten by the time the next NDAA comes around. For all the high-level talk, there's real movement happening down at the unit level, at least in some parts of the force. The Marine Corps is probably the furthest along. In June 2025, the 1st Marine Division, shout out Blue Diamond, published a 90-page s-UAS and c-uas integration handbook. It lays out exactly how small drones are being trained, tasked, and integrated into fire support teams and maneuver elements. It includes kill box procedures designed specifically for drones, standardized 5-line drone strike briefs, red team simulations of drone-on-drone fights, drone-delivered grenades, tactical drone controllers embedded in squads, and even procedures for using drones as ISR during machine gun fire or indirect fire spotting. This is also publicly available, so if you're curious for your own needs, whether that be, you're prepping for the end of the world or whatever, go ahead and check it out because it really is interesting. These methods are being practiced and refined in live training environments across the 1st Marine Division. One company even ran a proof of concept for using small drones to deliver supply drops to units in the field, which, let's be honest, is kind of an obvious use for these drones. The Army is pushing change too, especially in its training centers. At Hohenfels in Germany, US soldiers have been training against a drone-equipped OPFOR since 2016. It's one of the few places where US troops regularly go up against red teams using the same FPVs they might face in combat. More recently, the Army has revamped its capstone training events and basic training to focus on drone concealment and countermeasures. That means camouflage, signature management, and actual drone threat simulations, not just PowerPoint. Retired Army Lieutenant General Ben Hodges told Task and Purpose, "When you want change in the Army, you do it at the training center. If the OPFOR has drones, and they do, you have to get good at countering that and using your own." While some battalions are defining drone doctrine, others are still just trying to get their hands on working quadcopters. Standardization efforts do exist, but implementation remains uneven, and without sustained funding, support, and leadership buy-in, there's always a risk this becomes another short-lived trend. For all this progress, and we say all this progress with a grain of salt because when you start from 0, even going to 2 is a massive bump. Anyways, for all the progress, the US is still playing catch up in some critical areas. This fact is painfully and hilariously evident with this now deleted tweet from the Army bragging about dropping a grenade from a drone in 2025. And then there is their incredible plan to take out drones by shooting canister rounds from Abrams tanks. Yes, they want you to shoot canister rounds from Abrams tanks because apparently they've just witnessed Ukraine and Russia using tanks to shoot down drones or something. I don't know. Production is also a big bottleneck. Ukraine is building allegedly 200,000 drones per month. The US Defense Industrial Base isn't even close to touching that. That's not speculation, it's what multiple defense officials told Task and Purpose. The infrastructure just doesn't exist yet to manufacture drones at that kind of scale, especially not with US source components and military grade specs. The US is also woefully behind when it comes to tactical integration. Some Marine and Army units are running drone specific drills, others are still trying to figure out which office is supposed to order batteries. There's no universal doctrine across the services yet. Then there's the spectrum problem. RF congestion is already an issue in training environments. Without standardized frequency management, US units risk jamming their own gear or each other, and that's not hypothetical. It's already happened during joint exercises. The more drones we field, the worse that's going to get without very deliberate and aggressive planning. It's not just the offensive use of drones, it's also the defenses that are another concern. Directed energy weapons like microwave weapons have shown promise, but they're large, require a lot of power, and don't always stop a shielded drone or one flying low. Kinetic interceptors are expensive, limited in number, and often overkill for a $500 quadcopter, But if you're in a trench and this $500 quadcopter is coming after you, you're not going to feel too bad about using a $300,000 missile to take it out. That's why we're seeing the Army and Marine Corps experiment with layered defenses, drone-on-drone intercepts, shotguns, anti-drone nets, and a whole lot of other stuff. But none of these are mature yet. And finally, there's training that we're behind in. The Marine Corps has outlined drone tactics down to the squad level, but across the broader force, adoption is uneven. In some units, drone operations are embedded and practiced. In others, they're bolted on if they're even there at all. Basic training pipelines across the entire force haven't caught up entirely, and until drone operations are treated like core warfighting skills, not bolt-on capabilities, that gap is going to stay open. So what does catching up actually look like for the United States military? It does not mean trying to outproduce Ukraine or China, because that's not realistic and it may not even be necessary. What it does mean is fielding systems faster, pushing decision making down to the lowest levels, which we already have the structure for with our NCO Corps, and building a drone ecosystem that matches how American forces actually fight or will have to fight to survive. It means buying off-the-shelf drones when they work and letting troops test them in the field before a program of record ever gets spun up. It means treating tactical drones like ammo, where you use them, lose them, and then replace them. It also means trusting junior leaders to run kill chains. Right now, some drone launches still require coordination through battalion or even higher. That has to change. Small unit autonomy is supposed to be, and it is, a strength in the US military because this is where it matters. Until that mindset shift happens at every level, command, procurement, and doctrine, we're going to be fighting from behind. America still has a tech advantage, but that won't matter if we can't adapt fast enough to use the weapons that actually matter on a battlefield. The last 2 decades of war taught us what happens when the US walks into a fight it doesn't understand. Iraq, Afghanistan, urban warfare, counterinsurgency, we figured it out, at least on the ground, because politically it was still a mess, but only after taking heavy losses and having to rewrite doctrine and procurement on the fly. Some of you who are old enough will remember when Humvees were being ripped to shreds by IEDs and troops were having to weld metal plates on them because they couldn't get armor from the US Defense Industrial Complex fast enough. We were fortunate because the enemy we were fighting was not a conventional force, and so we kind of had some time, but this next go around we might not have that kind of time. Retired Army Lieutenant General Ben Hodges put it very bluntly. Are we going to be prepared? The commanders on the ground get it, but I'm not sure the administration does, he said. But right now, the Pentagon is finally, at least on the surface, taking drone warfare seriously. But the next fight might not wait for us to get it right, and on the receiving end of us not getting it right is your everyday average enlisted soldier and junior officer paying that price in their blood. Now, I wrote this script, but Jeff Schogol, as I mentioned before, is the true hero here. He is the Task and Purpose senior Pentagon reporter and has been covering the military for over 20 years. I could not have done this without him doing good journalism. So a huge shout out and a thank you to the rest of the Task and Purpose newsroom team because they truly are exceptional. Savvy edited the video and I'm wearing a shirt from Call for Fire at shopcallforfire.com. It's owned by a retired Army Forward Observer, Purple Heart recipient, and all-around awesome dude, Aaron Provost. That's Aaron with 2 A's, so he's Aaron Provost. So go ahead and check that out. I'll be highlighting other veteran-owned places in the videos, and this is not paid placement. I buy the shirts because I like them. So if you've got some ideas of places that have cool, fun shirts, let me know. And if you want to see what we have at Task and Purpose, you can check out store.taskandpurpose.com and use the code ActuallyWatch for 10% off. As always, I'm Kyle, your friendly ginger producer man. You are all dismissed, and I will see you next time.